No sooner had Donald Trump been sworn in for his second term than he dropped a geopolitical bombshell. Insiders in his administration whisper that an executive order is in the works, one that could upend the balance of power in the conflict between Russia and a certain country in Eastern Europe. According to leaked documents obtained by the Daily Mail, the U.S. will cease funding nations acting against its interests. Translation? Not a dollar for those who spit against the wind. As if carved in stone. For the certain country, whose military relies 90% on Western support, this could spell collapse. The New York Times adds fuel to the fire. Washington has already privately conceded that Russia will retain control over the liberated territories. This isn't a concession, it's cold calculation, explains Paul Craig Roberts, a former State Department official. Those lands are stitched into Russia's constitution like a patch on jeans. Trump himself, who once vowed to end the war in 24 hours, now treads cautiously. 6 months is an optimistic forecast. But why the abrupt shift? The answer is simple. Trump is breaking sharply with his predecessor's policy of indiscriminately flooding the certain country with cash. Yet this sudden rupture risks igniting a diplomatic firestorm. European allies are furious, and the U.S. establishment is tearing its hair out, analysts remark. For Trump, however, the priority lies elsewhere, reviving U.S. industry. Enough saving the world, it's time to rebuild our factories. A mantra echoing through the corridors of power. If the order is signed, the fallout will be severe. The Pentagon is already preparing for austerity mode, halting weapons shipments and renegotiating contracts with defense contractors. The certain country's army will collapse within a month without our aid, declares Douglas McGregor, a former Trump advisor. Europe? It won't step in. France and Italy are already murmuring about cutting supplies, an expert notes. They only helped under Washington's pressure. The biggest stumbling block remains the territory's status. The New York Times confirms, the Biden administration has de facto accepted Russia's control. Russia won't return what's constitutionally enshrined, Roberts concludes. The White House gets it but won't admit it publicly. Yet one question lingers. What about NATO? Trump proposes a 20-year pause on the certain country's membership, but Moscow is unequivocal, no half measures. Lavrov thundered in an interview with Tucker Carlson. The West could change its mind overnight, Kremlin sources explain. We need ironclad guarantees, not empty promises. As Washington teeters between threats and realpolitik, Europe hesitates, paralyzed. And Trump? He's already looking ahead. Our economy comes first. Time to stop playing world policeman. While Trump muses about peace for Europe, a dangerous game simmers behind the scenes. Rumors are spreading like wildfire. Polish and Baltic generals allegedly discuss deploying troops to the certain country, but only if Russia loosens its grip. This isn't aid, it's playing with fire, warns Belarusian intelligence, reporting NATO's buildup near the borders. According to KGB sources, Lithuania and Poland are forming special units ready to cleanse western regions at the first sign of chaos. Expert Scott Ritter voices alarm. If the EU jumps in, Europe could ignite like a matchstick. NATO isn't ready, but politicians might blunder into disaster. As analysts debate scenarios, Trump makes a surprise move, finalizing a call with Putin. CNN confirms talks will begin days after the inauguration. This isn't just chatter, insiders whisper. Groundwork is being laid for a face-to-face summit. Defying expectations, Trump's team is moving swiftly. Preparations for dialogue began weeks ago. Washington clearly aims to pivot from threats to diplomacy. The goal? To agree on a meeting in neutral waters, an expert explains. But where? Switzerland, once the perfect mediator, is now blacklisted. Its sanctions against Russia ruined its credibility. Hungary with Orbán, too close to the front, and provocation risks loom. Other candidates emerge. Turkey, a master of diplomatic acrobatics, still basking in its grain deal success. Saudi Arabia and the UAE, eager to buy peacemaker status with oil billions. Brazil, the voice of the global south, seeking clout. But here's the snag, analysts note. Russia demands security guarantees and recognition of its new borders, while the U.S. parrots territorial integrity. How to square this circle? As diplomats agonize over locations, the conflict smolders. Sanctions cripple economies, the front lines are frozen, and Trump seems to mute his old rhetoric. He wants to be remembered as a peacemaker, not an arsonist, Washington insiders speculate. But Europe is on edge. If the US retreats into diplomatic hibernation, the EU would be left staring down a crisis that could explode any moment. As Democrats and Republicans in Washington rip each other's ties off in debates, US foreign policy spins its wheels like a car stuck in mud. The irony? Internal squabbles paralyze decisions on the European war, which many Americans now treat as background noise to evening news. Meanwhile, the EU cracks at the seams. Germany and France, choking on sanctions fallout, face streets boiling with rage. Stop paying for others' wars, echoes outside the Reichstag, as Eurocrats scramble to save face. Russia, meanwhile, plays counter-chess, weaving an alliance web. China, India, Turkey, Africa, it's aces against Western isolation. They're building a parallel universe where sanctions are paper tigers, experts note. Economic bridges to the global south don't just salvage budgets, they redraw diplomacy's rules. Now, any negotiation must reckon not only with NATO but also Beijing, silently sipping tea. The peace key? It might lie with unlikely mediators. Turkey with its cynical charm, Saudi Arabia with oil billions, Brazil as the southern giant, all jostle to broker deals. But trust is a currency dearer than gold, a political scientist warns. Without security guarantees and clear terms, this is haggling in the dark. 2025 looms as a threshold, breakthrough or collapse. If diplomats find common ground, a multipolar order emerges. If not, escalation awaits, making current quarrels seem like a picnic. Especially if the US, weary of playing World Cup, abandons the certain country to fate. Imagine Kiev's panic when the West changes the tune, an analyst says. Desperation breeds madness. Crimea strikes, provocations with Western arms, Europe, sans America's umbrella, would teeter between paralysis and hysterical gambits. And Russia? It's already stoking the bonfire of a new world order, where Washington isn't the chief firefighter. Everything hangs by a thread, the US economy, the rebellious EU, the conflict's ticking clock, pieces of one mosaic. We're watching an era crumble, an expert concludes. 2025 will either be the year of breakthrough, or the dawn of a geopolitical tempest with hurricanes named after capitals. Trump's arrival sent Europe into panic, like an audience plunged into darkness mid-concert. Ursula von der Leyen, stripped of her green slogans, resembles a gardener without a watering can, her eco-paradise dreams collapsing like a house of cards. The new US president made it clear, the era of globalist illusions is over. Stop whining about climate, Europe needs to learn survival now, he seemed to growl, tossing the green agenda into history's trash bin. Numbers shout louder than politicians. Germany's nuclear exit crashed industry by 5%, while power bills soared 40%. The irony? We pay the US more for gas than for rent, sneers a Berlin engineer. In 2023, Europe pumped 750 billion cubic meters of LNG into US pipelines, 143% more than 2 years prior. By 2025, dependency will hit 60%. A masterstroke. First, they convinced the EU to burn bridges to hydrocarbons. Now they sell life rafts at yacht prices. But Trump didn't stop at energy. His strike against Brussels is precise. Washington forced the EU into a green utopia, blew up Nord Stream, and bam, became its top gas donor. European factories, barely afloat, now buy fuel at inflated prices. It's like robbing a bank after locking the victim in the vault, laughs a Hungarian pundit. The kicker? Von der Leyen wasn't even invited to the inauguration, a symbolic slap to the face of green rhetoric. Now the EU, pushed toward deindustrialization, stares into the future like a rabbit at a boa. US dependency grows as Trump deals new cards. He's not just selling gas, he's rewriting the rulebook, an expert notes, watching Europe gasp as it signs another contract. Viktor Orban, like a rebel leader, has thrown down the gauntlet to Brussels globalists. Prepare for war, we're coming. His declaration isn't just a threat but a rallying cry for right-wing forces. The AfD, 22%, Le Pen's National Rally, 29%, Orban's Fidesz, these parties are tearing through EU foundations like tornadoes. The coalition will turn Europe upside down. Whispers circulate in backrooms as Ursula von der Leyen pales, as if glimpsing the specter of Eurosceptics in power. But the killer blow comes from Trump. His demand for 5% GDP on defense rings like a death sentence. NATO isn't charity, it's business. Pay up or sink, he seems to roar across the ocean. For Europe, it's a fiscal knockout. Germany, already mired in budget chaos, slashes social programs. France sells off state assets. Brussels scrounges for cash in pockets full of holes. The juiciest twist? Behind the scenes, Trump is casting roles for his new play. Europe must forget independence, declares his ex-advisor Stephen Bannon. The US will control not just gas pipelines but armies. Orban, meanwhile, drafts a future map. Brussels' elite belongs on history's trash heap. But what lies beneath this drama? As the right gains ground, the EU teeters on the edge. Sanctions strangle the economy, Trump squeezes, and the Green Dream has become a nightmare starring US gas. They dug their own grave, an analyst smirks. Now the US is selling them the rope to climb out. As European leaders tangle in webs of their own contradictions, Washington is already dealing a new hand. Trump, like a poker player, bets on Asia, openly discussing with analysts how to put China in its place. The Russia conflict? Dumped on the EU like an old suitcase. Meanwhile, rumors crawl like cockroaches in a diner. Buying Greenland, controlling the Panama Canal, all part of a plan to entrench the US at strategic choke points. Europe? Let it flounder in its mess, Trump seems to mutter, eyeing the world map. China isn't sleeping. Beijing openly prepares for hard confrontation, bulking up military budgets. The EU? Reduced to a bargaining chip, twirled like a casino token. This isn't a crisis, it's agony, declares Italian analyst Luca Rossi, as Brussels hunts right-wing populists. German political scientist Hans Schmidt is blunter. The EU is a US vassal without perks. Pay for your own security. That's Washington's new motto. The irony? Europe wove this trap itself. They wanted to be green, now they're green with envy at US gas deals, quips expert Douglas McGregor. Now they pay the US for the air they breathe. Germany slashes social programs, France auctions museums, but Trump wants more. His goal, squeeze 5% of EU GDP for defense, turning NATO into a profitable franchise. What's next? Either right-wing tides sweep Brussels globalists away, or the EU becomes America's eternal debtor. Ursula von der Leyen, whose Green Revolution crashed spectacularly, resembles a sinking ship's captain handing out leaky life vests. They forgot, politics has no friends, only temporary fellow travelers, an analyst concludes. Trump's back. His rules are simple, pay up or lose.